I wasn't supposed to be home that night. The flight from Baltimore got moved up last minute, and honestly, I didn't even text Jamie to let her know. Part of me wanted to surprise her. The other part, the quieter, more cynical part, was starting to wonder what I'd find if I ever did. We'd been married 7 years, and I used to think we were unshakable. But lately, things hadn't felt right. Little things. Cold shoulders, half smiles. Too many evenings where her phone never left her palm. I stepped through the front door and set my suitcase down quietly. The house smelled like vanilla and something sharper. Cologne, maybe? Couldn't place it. The lights were low, the kind of dim where shadows stretch out and everything feels more distant than it should. I paused in the entryway and immediately noticed something off. Sitting on the edge of the living room chair was a glittery clutch. It was silver, beaded, almost tacky in a glamorous sort of way, and definitely not one of her day-to-day purses. Jamie used to save it for weddings or holiday parties. She hadn't pulled it out in over a year. Next to it was a pale blue dress shirt. A man's shirt, not mine. It was half-folded, sleeves inside out, like someone had yanked it off in a hurry. I walked over and touched the fabric. Still warm. That's when something inside me sank. Not all at once, more like one floor at a time. I kept moving past the living room and into the hallway. The bathroom light was on. Inside, the counter was a mess. Her makeup bag lay open like it had exploded, brushes and lipstick tubes everywhere. And there, right next to the sink, was a bottle of cologne. Expensive. Sleek black glass. The cap was off. I'd never seen it before. I didn't want to make assumptions, but everything was starting to blur together. The cologne, the shirt, the purse. Things weren't lining up. I walked into the bedroom. The bed looked like it had been rushed to look untouched. Covers pulled halfway up, pillows stacked too neatly, like someone had tried to fake order after chaos. On the dresser, a candle still flickered, almost out. It smelled faintly of cedar and spice. But it was the whiskey glass on my nightstand that really did it. Short tumbler, single cube of ice, her lipstick on the rim, and right next to it our wedding photo, face down. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't even hear her coming down the hallway. When Jamie appeared in the doorway, she looked composed. Not startled, not panicked, just calm, like she'd already prepared for this moment and rehearsed the lines. "Oh hey, you're home early," she said. There was something in her tone. Not guilt, not warmth, just this unsettling, casual coolness. She stepped inside and brushed a piece of hair behind her ear like nothing was wrong. "I thought your flight was later?" she added, blinking at me like I was the one out of place. "Got in early," I replied. My voice sounded different, detached even to my own ears. She nodded slowly. "Well, sorry about the mess. Amber and her boyfriend were here, just for a bit." She pointed back toward the living room, like that explained the clutch and the shirt and the candle still burning. "They were just in town for a night," she continued. "I told them they could crash here for a little while before heading out again. I didn't think you'd be back yet." Her words were smooth, quick, too quick. Amber had been her friend from college. I knew her, and I knew her boyfriend, too. Some artsy guy who played guitar and didn't own a dress shirt like that. I said nothing, just looked at her. "Anyway, they just left like 20 minutes ago," she said with a small, practiced shrug. I was about to blow the candle out. She leaned over and did just that, like proving something. I didn't move. I didn't accuse her. I didn't ask where the guy's shirt came from, or why there was cologne in the bathroom, or why the wedding photo was turned face down like it couldn't stand to look at us anymore. Instead, I nodded like that made sense. Like everything was fine. And inside something caved. Quietly. Not loud. Not dramatic. More like a crack running through concrete. A split I didn't know how deep it would go. She kept talking. Said she'd clean up in a bit. Asked if I wanted a drink. Started untying her hair like this was just another evening. Like nothing was unraveling beneath the surface. I watched her move, watched how carefully she avoided eye contact. And I realized in that moment, she wasn't surprised to see me. She was surprised she hadn't been caught. After that night, something shifted in me. I didn't say a word to Jamie about the shirt. or the cologne, or the glass on the nightstand. I didn't even touch the wedding photo. I just flipped it back up the next morning and stared at it longer than usual. It was our second anniversary, the day we'd taken that photo. We looked younger, warmer. Her eyes were softer then. Now they barely met mine. She acted like nothing had happened. Made coffee the next morning. Asked if I wanted eggs. She even hummed while moving around the kitchen. I watched her, wondering how someone could glide through the wreckage like that, like it hadn't even touched her. And I played along. That was my mistake. I told myself I didn't know anything for sure. That maybe Amber really had dropped by. Maybe it was just someone else's shirt. Someone else's cologne. Some entirely innocent scenario twisted by bad timing and suspicion. But deep down I knew. I just didn't want to know. That was the beginning of what I now call the rewinds. Every night after work, I'd come home and replay the week in my head, frame by frame. Her changing clothes before heading out. Twice, sometimes 3 times. Her phone always face down on the table. Screen dimmed. She'd added a new lock code, a 6-digit one, instead of the old swipe pattern we used to share. One night, I casually asked if she'd seen the charger I kept in the kitchen drawer. She said no without looking up from her laptop. Said she'd been using her wireless one upstairs. I checked later. The charger was gone, and her laptop was shut tight in her closet. She'd never hidden it before. That's when I started noticing other things. Small things that began to form a pattern. The way she'd leave the house around 8 o'clock and not get back until midnight, claiming she was helping organize a charity auction. How she'd come home freshly showered, hair damp, makeup scrubbed, like she wanted to erase wherever she'd just been. And the smell. She started wearing a new perfume. Not the warm, citrusy scent I used to love, but something heavier. Muskier. She said it was a sample from a boutique downtown. I asked if she'd bought the bottle. She told me no. Then I found the receipt in the trash. It wasn't even hidden. Just balled up like it meant nothing. Like I wasn't supposed to see it. Another night, I noticed a faint red mark on her collarbone, right above the edge of her sweater. I reached out, half joking, and said, "You okay? Looks like a burn." She pulled away. "Hair straightener," she said quickly. "Burned myself this morning." She hadn't used a straightener in over a month. Still, I said nothing. I wish I could explain why. Pride? Fear? Maybe part of me hoped that if I didn't say it out loud, it wouldn't be real. That if I just stayed quiet, she'd come back. That whatever this was, it would pass. Instead, I started shrinking. Every night, I watched her get ready for somewhere I wasn't invited to. Every morning, I woke up before her and stared at the ceiling, wondering who she was texting while she showered. Our conversations got shorter. I stopped asking about her day because the answers felt rehearsed. She'd tell me about her meetings, and I'd nod like I believed her. I asked once where the charity office was located. She blinked, hesitated, then said, "They move locations a lot." I didn't push. Even meals became mechanical. We used to talk over dinner, argue about movies, plan trips we never took. Now it was silence. I'd cook. She'd eat. Then she'd vanish upstairs. I started cleaning more than I ever had. Not because I cared about the house, but because it was the only thing I could control. I found myself folding her clothes more carefully. Like if I showed enough tenderness, she'd remember who I was. Once, while putting away her laundry, I found a receipt tucked into her jeans pocket. Another boutique. This one for a gold bracelet I'd never seen her wear. The signature on the slip wasn't hers. I don't even think it was meant to be in her pocket. And still, I stayed quiet. I told myself I was giving her space. That maybe she was going through something, a phase, a burnout, a depression. I convinced myself that pressing her would only push her away further. But it wasn't space she wanted. It was distance. It was freedom. One afternoon I came home early, just to see if anything felt off in the daylight. The house was quiet. Her car was gone, though she said she'd be working from home. On the coffee table was a grocery bag with a single bottle of wine and 2 glasses. New. The price tags were still on them. When she walked in an hour later, she didn't flinch. "Oh, forgot to put those away," she said, brushing past me. For who? I asked. My voice came out sharper than I meant. She paused. What? The wine. The glasses. You said you were working today. She smiled, tilted her head. That smile, not fake, not nervous. Controlled. Oh, come on. You think I can't treat myself once in a while? And that was the moment it hit me. She wasn't nervous because she wasn't hiding. She'd already stopped caring whether I noticed. She wasn't scared of being caught. She just didn't think I'd do anything about it. That realization stayed with me. Not the suspicion. Not the possibility that she was lying. But the certainty that she had no intention of stopping, and no fear of consequence. She'd stopped treating me like her husband. I was just there. A piece of the furniture. Someone to nod at in passing. A witness who didn't speak. I stopped checking the time when she left. I stopped asking where she was going. The questions became meaningless. Her world had expanded. Clubs, restaurants, volunteer events. And I was no longer part of it. She'd even stopped wearing her wedding ring some nights. Said it slipped off during dishes. We had a whole drawer full of rubber gloves. I knew something was coming. I could feel it. Like the weight before a storm. I just didn't know when, or how. Only that it would break everything we had left. The confirmation didn't come with a shout, or a fight, or some dramatic discovery like you'd see in a movie. No, when it finally happened, it was quiet, precise, like the moment a surgeon's scalpel breaks the skin, sharp, inevitable, and strangely sterile. It was a Thursday. Jamie had told me earlier in the week that she'd be out of town for a corporate retreat. Something about team building and seminars near Asheville. She said she'd be gone until Saturday night. Left Wednesday morning with a suitcase and her usual air of distance. I had no reason to be home Thursday night. I worked overnight shifts on a rotating basis at the medical supply warehouse. This week I was supposed to cover Friday. But late Wednesday night, my supervisor called to say they'd overstaffed and offered to swap my shift. So I drove home Thursday evening instead. I didn't tell Jamie. Didn't even think to. Or maybe I did, and part of me decided not to. A quiet itch at the back of my brain whispering don't warn her. The driveway lights were on when I pulled in. Her car was parked there, sitting exactly where I usually parked mine. That was the first thing. Second, the front porch light, the one she never left on, glowed a soft yellow. Third, the faint flicker of movement behind the upstairs blinds. I sat in the car for a minute, heart hammering in my chest. There's a difference between suspecting something and knowing it. Suspecting allows you to imagine other explanations. Knowing leaves no space for hope. I got out quietly, walked up the steps with deliberate slowness. My keys jingled in my pocket, too loud in the stillness of the evening. I didn't take them out. The front door wasn't locked. Inside, the house was warm, too warm. The kind of heat you turn up when you want to get cozy. Music was playing upstairs. Faint, jazzy, romantic. I didn't call her name. Didn't say, I'm home. I walked through the living room, past the couch where she used to fall asleep on my chest, past the kitchen where she'd once tried to teach me how to make risotto. Everything looked clean, tidy, like a set piece. Then I climbed the stairs. Each step felt like it was being recorded. Every creak, every shift of weight. I reached the landing and stood still. Our bedroom door was closed, but the light from inside spilled through the bottom crack. I already knew. I stood there, hand hovering over the knob, and let the silence crush me for a few more seconds. Let it wrap around my ribs and squeeze. Then I opened the door, slowly, and there she was, Jamie, in our bed, with someone else. He was shirtless, lying half-tucked under the sheets, glass of wine on the nightstand. She was sitting up, still in a lace bralette I didn't recognize, her hair down, one hand holding a cigarette, a habit she'd claimed to have quit. She froze when she saw me. Her mouth opened. No sound. The guy, I didn't recognize him. Mid-30s, maybe. Athletic build. He turned his head like I'd interrupted a dream. He wasn't scared. Just confused. Nobody moved. I looked around. The candles, again with the candles, were lit along the windowsill. Her speaker was playing a Norah Jones song. On my dresser, A bottle of cognac we'd been saving for our anniversary was open. The wedding photo? Turned away. Again. I didn't speak. Didn't rage. Didn't ask, why? Instead, I turned and walked out. Back down the stairs. Back through the too-clean kitchen. At the dining table, I grabbed a pen from the drawer and tore a page out of the old notebook we kept for grocery lists. I sat down, took a breath, and wrote, Jamie, you don't need to explain. Consider this the last time I come home without knocking. I signed my name, left the note folded on the table next to her purse. Then I stepped outside into the crisp night air. No one followed me. I got in my car, drove away without a destination. No music, no words. Just the sound of tires on pavement and my heartbeat trying to outrun itself. I made it as far as a rest stop an hour outside Charlotte before I pulled over. Sat there with the engine running and my hands frozen on the wheel. She was supposed to be in Asheville. She had looked me in the eye and told me she'd be staying at a hotel. She'd even sent me a photo, some carefully cropped image of a mountain view. I almost laughed. There'd been no argument, no prelude, no final straw, just confirmation that what I feared, what I knew was not paranoia. It was reality, the kind of reality you don't come back from. My phone buzzed once in the cup holder. Jamie, text message. Harris, please don't leave. I can explain. I stared at the screen, then powered the phone off, and just sat there, not thinking, not crying, just breathing, trying to remember what it felt like to be someone who believed his wife loved him. The motel I ended up in wasn't one I'd ever noticed before, even though I must have passed it 100 times. Just off the interstate outside Charlotte, a flickering neon sign, a cracked parking lot, and a lobby that smelled faintly of mildew and cigarette ash. They didn't ask many questions. The woman at the front desk handed me a key without looking me in the eye. Room 207, second floor. I didn't bother unpacking. I dropped my duffel bag in the corner, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the blank wall across from me. The room was bare except for a dresser, a lamp with a torn shade, and a television that only got 2 channels. The carpet had dark patches where something had clearly leaked and never been cleaned. But it was quiet. For the first time in days, maybe weeks, I didn't hear Jamie's voice in my head. I didn't hear the echo of her heels on the hardwood, or the clink of wine glasses, or that tight, careful tone she used when she lied. Just silence. And for a while that was enough. I lay down on top of the covers without taking off my shoes. I didn't even take out my phone. I think part of me believed she'd try to call or text or explain. But nothing came. Not that night. Not the next day. Not the one after that, either. 3 days passed. I ate vending machine crackers and drank lukewarm sodas from the ice machine. I barely slept. The TV stayed off. My phone stayed off. I let time pass without looking at the clock. And for once, the world didn't demand anything of me. No responsibilities. No conversations. Just me, and the sound of the heater rattling against the wall like it was trying to breathe. On the 3rd morning, I turned my phone back on. 5 missed calls. 2 texts. All from Jamie. The last message read, "Please talk to me. I don't know what to say, but I need to. I'm sorry." That was it. No effort. No detail. No panic. Just a vague attempt to plug a hole in a sinking ship. I didn't reply. What was I supposed to say? It's okay? We'll figure it out? I wasn't even sure what I wanted at that point. Closure? Revenge? Forgiveness? None of those felt real. What I felt, if I had to put a name to it, was erased. Like someone had deleted the version of me that existed in our marriage. The next hit came later that afternoon. A bank alert. At first, I thought it was a fraud warning. But when I opened the notification, it showed a $1,947 withdrawal from our shared savings account. The account we'd set up 3 years ago. The one we agreed we'd never touch except for emergencies. Loan payments, medical bills, disaster-type stuff. The label on the transaction just said, "Check card purchase, Denver, Colorado." Denver. She had told me the retreat was in Asheville. I stared at the screen, rereading the word, Denver, like it might eventually change into something else. Something that made sense. I checked the account history. Another $380 2 days earlier. $112 the day before that. She had drained almost everything. I froze the account immediately, called the bank, put a stop on our cards. Too late. Most of it was gone. Just like that. Jamie hadn't just lied. She'd planned something. She had moved money. Our money. While I sat in a motel, eating chips for dinner and trying to figure out whether I'd gone crazy or just blind, I threw my phone across the room. It hit the wall and dropped behind the dresser. I didn't bother picking it up. Instead, I sat on the floor with my back against the bed, my hands in my hair, and let the silence crawl back in. No more hypotheticals. No more maybe it's not what I think. It was exactly what I thought. Worse even, she wasn't just cheating. She was building something else, something new without me, funded by what we had worked to save. And somehow that part hurt more than the night I walked in on her with him. That night was a betrayal of the body. This was a betrayal of intention. A future. I spent the next 2 days trying to figure out what to do. I didn't go back home. Couldn't. I wasn't ready to stand in that house again. The place where we picked paint colors together, where we argued about which couch to buy, where she smiled at me across the kitchen like none of this was even possible. I thought about calling a lawyer. Thought about going to her job, making a scene. I even thought about driving to Denver, just to see if she'd look me in the eye again. But I didn't do any of that. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in months, maybe longer. I thought, not about her, not about the guy, about me, who I'd become, who I'd allowed myself to be. The man who looked the other way when her answers didn't add up. The husband who didn't ask questions because he feared the answers. The partner who let silence become routine. That's what betrayal does, I think. It doesn't just break your heart. It makes you question whether you even had one to begin with. I stayed in that motel until my money started to run low. I withdrew cash from my own account, the one I had opened before we were married, the one she never had access to. It wasn't much, but it was mine. On the 6th night, I finally packed up my things. Took one last look around the room and flipped the light switch off with a strange sense of finality. I didn't know where I was going next. I just knew I couldn't go back to what I'd come from. The silence had done its job. It hadn't healed me, but it had cleared the fog. Now I could see the wreckage for what it was, and I wasn't about to let her walk away with the whole ship. The idea hit me in the middle of a gas station parking lot. I'd pulled off the highway to stretch my legs, drink a flat soda, and figure out whether I should call my cousin about crashing on his couch. That's when I remembered the envelope. A year ago, we'd received a letter addressed to J. Slater, Jamie's maiden name. It came from a self-storage facility out in Mecklenburg County, about 40 minutes from our house. I remember holding it at the kitchen table, flipping it over like it was a riddle. "You open a unit?" I'd asked. Jamie had barely glanced at it. "Oh, that? No, it's probably from back when I moved out of my old place. They must still have my info on file." Then she tossed it in the junk drawer and changed the subject. At the time, I didn't think much of it. Now I couldn't stop thinking about it. So I turned my car toward Mecklenburg. The place was tucked behind an industrial plaza. Rows of metal doors, beige buildings, cameras on every corner. The guy at the front desk looked at me like I was either lost or about to break in. "I'm trying to find info on a unit under the name Jamie Slater," I said. "Could be listed as J. Slater." "Do you have a unit number?" he asked. "No." "Are you listed on the lease?" "No." He gave me the kind of look you give a guy who's about to waste your time. "Look, man," I added. "I'm her husband. I'm just trying to find out if she's been keeping anything here." Something changed in his expression. Not sympathy, more like mild curiosity. "I can't give you access," he said. "But I can tell you there's a unit under that name. Been rented for 22 months. Paid in advance. Cash. Cash, of course. Can you tell me if it's been accessed recently?" He raised an eyebrow. "That I actually can. System logs each entry by code. Last time someone entered was 6 days ago." 6 days ago. right around the time she told me she had a volunteer event. He shrugged. All I can tell you is that it's Unit 148, past the third gate, left side. I stared at the number like it was a lottery ticket I didn't want to scratch. I thanked him, walked back to my car, and sat behind the wheel. I didn't have a key code. I didn't have permission. But what I finally had, was enough anger to stop playing by her rules. I waited until another car exited the gate and slid in before it closed. Drove slow. Parked near 148. The lock was a standard cylinder latch, nothing fancy. I'd seen YouTube videos of people opening these with a pen cap. I wasn't that good, but I'd brought a flathead screwdriver just in case. Took me 12 minutes to get it open. My hands were shaking the entire time. When the door finally rolled up, it was like staring into the last 20 months of Jamie's double life. Boxes, stacked neatly, labeled in handwriting I recognized but hadn't seen in years. The neat, almost too perfect script she used back in college. Designer shopping bags lined the left wall, Louis Vuitton, Gucci, Versace, none of which I'd ever seen in our house. Next to them, shoe boxes, some unopened. High heels she never wore around me. Then came the gift bags. Wrapped packages with names written on them. Names I didn't know. To Sienna, happy birthday. For Wills, congrats on the promotion. To Aria, just because. Who were these people? I opened one box. Inside was a watch. Gold. Probably worth more than what I'd made last month. Next to it, a sealed envelope with $600 in cash. No note. Another box had an iPad, still in the shrink wrap. And behind all of it, tucked into a bin near the back, was a file folder. I pulled it out slowly, like it might detonate. Inside, photocopies of wire transfers. Payment stubs from an LLC I'd never heard of. Invoices from a consulting firm that didn't list her name, just the entity, StatEra Consulting. I checked the bank statements. Monthly deposits. Significant ones. Ranging from $3,000 to $6,500. All sent to a private account. Not one of ours. The account was under Jamie Slater. Her maiden name. She'd been working under the radar. Secret income. Secret identity. A double life funded by lies. And then I found the photo. It wasn't hidden. In fact, it was framed. Jamie and the man from our bedroom, the same guy, were standing in front of a private helicopter, laughing. Arms around each other like they were posing for a magazine shoot. On the back of the frame, in her handwriting, it read, "This is just the beginning." I stared at it for a long time. My mind kept flashing back to our wedding night, to her vows, to the way she used to look at me like I was her favorite place in the world. But this was calculated. This wasn't some drunk mistake or emotional slip. This was a plan. She had money I didn't know about. A business I'd never heard of, relationships with people I'd never met, and now a documented partnership with a man who had been in my house. In my bed, I set the photo down and backed away slowly. I felt like I'd opened a portal to someone else's world, only to realize that I was the ghost in my story. She hadn't just cheated. She had replaced me, not in a petty way, not in some romantic sense, in a strategic way. She was building a new life and leaving the wreckage in my name. The unit smelled like perfume and cardboard. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, and left everything exactly as I found it. Except for one thing, the folder. I took it with me, not out of spite, but because it was no longer just a marriage issue. This was theft. This was fraud. And now I had the receipts. A few days after I found the storage unit, a thick envelope arrived at my P.O. box. Inside were divorce papers and a letter, but not for me. It was addressed to Garrett Cross. Jamie wrote about how she had broken me emotionally, how I'd sign anything she handed me, and that the plan was working. She mentioned a new house in Denver, a wedding set for October, and how all assets were set to transfer to her, while debts stayed in my name. She said I was compliant, disposable. Reading that letter, something inside me snapped. It wasn't grief anymore. It was clarity. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. I was being erased methodically. But she'd underestimated me. She left a trail, and now I had the map. I gave everything to my lawyer, the letter, the financials, the helicopter photo. He filed charges for hidden income, marital fraud, and asset stripping. A court order froze our accounts. Jamie was served. Her lawyer had nothing to say. A week later, Garrett's firm crumbled under scandal. The contract between Jamie and his company leaked. Turns out their consulting firm was built on lies and image manipulation. Investors fled. Jamie lost everything she'd schemed for. For once, I didn't raise my voice. I let the truth speak louder.